welcome to our Light Up Times Square event. For those of you who made the journey to be here with us in person, and for everyone who is joining us virtually, thank you for the gift of your time. It is truly appreciated. I was a Special Forces officer for just shy of a quarter of a century, and over those 25 years, I had the honor of leading some of the most remarkable teams in the world that no one knew about. And as the chairman of the board for the Erase PTSD Now Foundation, I'm again leading a remarkable team with miraculous people doing work that is known to but a few. But in a few minutes, as we literally illuminate the cityscape, our message and mission will be seen and heard by millions of people we hope to serve. It's my privilege to introduce our Master of Ceremonies. Linda Vester is a philanthropist, award-winning journalist, and mental health advocate. From 1999 to 2005, she worked as an anchor on the Fox News Channel. From 1990 to 1995, she worked as a correspondent on NBC and MSNBC. In 2006, Linda wrote and produced an award-winning documentary called Back Home about the Rwanda genocide. It tells the story of a Tutsi youth who survived the genocide but lost his family in the Hutu killing sprees. In 2021, she formed the Healthy Minds Foundation, which helps fund low-income individuals with PTSD to get medical treatment through Erase PTSD Now. Linda graduated magna cum laude from Boston University with a bachelor's degree in journalism in 1987. She earned an honors degree from the Sorbonne in Paris and was a Fulbright Scholar of Middle East Affairs in Egypt in 1989. Currently, she serves on the board of the Institute of International Education, the Hackley School, and the Summer Steps program. She's married to Glenn Greenberg, with whom she shares 4 children. And I will go off script here to tell you that I consider her a close friend who has a heart as big as Times Square and a passion for helping people that is brighter than all these lights combined. It's my pleasure to welcome her to this event.
I am one of the people fortunate enough to say that the work of Erase PTSD Now has changed my life. So I'm doing my best to help others get the same treatment that I was lucky enough to receive. I am a survivor of PTSD, complex PTSD. And you might look at me and say, well, gosh, she doesn't look like a typical PTSD person. But that's just the point. There is no typical PTSD sufferer. Trauma affects all of us. Trauma does not discriminate. You don't have to be a military veteran or a survivor of violent crime. Life deals out trauma to all of us. And it crosses socioeconomic boundaries. No one gets a free pass. And yet it's so little talked about. And right now in America and all around the world, there is so much trauma walking around. So many people who are desperate to be treated. And they need something like what we're going to talk about today. So very shortly, my story. I had childhood trauma. I saw some pretty hairy things as a foreign correspondent in war zones. I am a survivor of parenting. Every parent in this room knows what I'm talking about, including a pretty scary health scare with one of my kids. So I had complex PTSD, and I was living with it and kind of limping around with it for a long time, and tried a lot of things that modern medicine had to offer. And some things helped, but nothing very much. And then something happened last summer. A friend of mine who is a Navy SEAL came to visit our family. And one evening as we were sitting around the campfire, I turned to him and said, "How is it that you are the happiest Navy SEAL I have ever met?" And he said, "Well, I got this thing called stellate ganglion block in 2012, and it changed my life." And it was a record scratch moment. And I said, "Hang on." And I started Googling. And I found out more about stellate ganglion block. And I kept Googling, until I found this doctor, Eugene Lipov. And I said, I'm tracking this guy down, and I'm going to get this treatment. Fast forward, he was able to help me get treated in August of last year. And sure enough, it changed my life. It gave me back joy and peace that I hadn't had since I was a kid. My husband says he got his wife back. My kids say, thank God you got this, Mom. And so it's now my pleasure and my privilege to be able to share this story with you so that you can see that there are so many different faces of trauma and that this treatment really works in a way that nothing I have ever seen does. And so I'm working to help Erase PTSD Now make this more accessible to people of all income levels, because everyone with trauma deserves this life-changing and life-saving treatment. So now I'd like you to meet somebody who has earned the Bronze Star and Purple Heart for his service to our country. Dennis Finley came of age in 1960s era New York City, and he met his beautiful wife Sharon in the Bronx. He became a father soon after, and then, like so many of his age, his life was upended when he was sent to Vietnam in 1968. His valiant service ended when a mortar shell penetrated his right frontal lobe, and he was left with traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress. The walls came crashing down afterward. Substance abuse took over and wreaked havoc on his life, bringing his career to a halt, landing him in a VA hospital psych ward, and followed by over a decade of therapy. Though he did find some relief, nothing served to restore him to his pre-trauma state. And he reluctantly accepted this as the new normal, until he saw an episode of 60 Minutes some years ago. And as he watched 60 Minutes, he saw them describe SGB therapy, stellate ganglion block. And he decided to go to Chicago for the treatment on November 2018. And from here, I'd like him to pick up the story. Please join me in welcoming Sergeant Dennis Finley.
My only regret is I wish my wife could be here to have heard that introduction. I'd probably score really high with her after that. But there are members of my family here tonight, and I am honored to be asked to speak here. I just spent quite a while speaking with Mr. Toolan, and as we spoke, I guess probably because of our military backgrounds, I began reliving the journey that eventually led me to Dr. Lipov's door, and the new sense came to life. If I were to describe all the trauma that I've experienced in my life, it would probably take me hours. But I will be able to condense that into a few statements and tell you that before I went to Vietnam, I had experienced some really bad trauma myself, a whole range of homelessness, poverty, sexual molestation. So I had been taken down a few times, and I don't know whether I was wrapped too tight when I went to Vietnam to begin with, but I can't make light of that. I understand what trauma is and how it creates this disorder. Because I hear people speak all the time, PTSD, and I could tell you from my own personal experience, I learned how to handle the PTS, not the D. Developing a disorder whereby I could not handle stress made me unable to approach many situations that I otherwise should be in, where I could grow. So for my experience, I was, as Linda said, on my way to a successful life, and the symptoms of PTSD, based on my own experience, they don't go away because they didn't go away because I was distracted in my profession or in my commitment to my marriage or spending time with my wonderful children. It was always there. I always sensed something about me was not complete. And it caused me to isolate and seek shelter in solitude and hope that in doing so I would come out okay. And I never did. I always came out worse than when I went into solitude. At the point where I completely lost control of my life through substance abuse, I received an intervention from a bunch of Vietnam vets, and they told me about this wonderful PTSD program at the VA hospital in upstate New York in Montrose. So I applied to this program, and I was screened, and I was told, yeah, we think we can help you. We have a 10-month waiting list, though. So at the time, I was an active drug user and thought, here's all this help available to me, but I got to spend another 10 months in the streets before I can get it. And I'm telling you this because the day finally came when I was called and I said, all right, we have an opening for you. So on the day of, I packed my bag and took the train up to this hospital, got over to the building where the Vietnam Veterans Evaluation Treatment Program was being conducted, stepped up to the door and started to ring the bell, and I couldn't do it. In an instant, I felt this profound sorrow about my life and said, look at yourself. All these things you've accomplished in your life, all the good that you've done, and here you are committing yourself to a mental institution. And I couldn't do it. I stepped away, stood in the corner of the lobby, and just cried for about 15 minutes. And finally found the courage, rang that bell, and began 5 months of very, very intense treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder. And after 5 months, as Linda said in part of my bio, I spent another 12 years in outpatient treatment because I was determined to free myself from these symptoms, from this disorder, disease that prevented always the real me from emerging. So I learned a lot about PTSD in the process, and I came to understand how I could conduct a healthy, productive life and find the peace I was looking for. Well, I did the best I could, but I knew it wasn't enough. So I began to accept that, this is where I'm at. I can't get anything more out of outpatient. I understand what the disorder is. I have a pretty good idea what caused it. So now I got to man up and conduct the rest of my life. Everything was fine. My children and I were fine. My grandchildren are here tonight. Just there were enough of the right distractions to help me appreciate life. And then one Sunday night, as Linda said again in my bio, I'm watching a 60 Minutes program, and I see this segment about Dr. Lipov's treatment. And I understood immediately, there is something else out there. There is something that will shine a light on this darkness inside of me and will allow for the real me to surface. And I'll feel as whole again as I haven't felt since the day I marched off to war. So I didn't really take Dr. Lipov's treatment fully as a success. I'm not going to get fooled, okay? I got this life here. It's the best I can get, and it's not worth risking. So I did what I felt I had to do. I researched Dr. Lipov's program until it was like there were no words left to read about it. I spoke with other organizations that conducted the treatment. I spoke with a wonderful ward nurse in a treatment PTSD pilot program in a VA hospital in Palo Alto, California. So, long story short, I was in the hunt. And after I was satisfied that I would look into this, I worked with my psychologist at the VA, and I said, listen, this is a big thing, and I want to go into it as clean as possible. So I don't want to take Zoloft anymore, and I don't want to take Trazodone anymore, and I don't want to use clonazepam for my worst moments. I want to give this treatment an honest shot at reaching me. So I did all that over 9 months, and I still remember the day my wife and I leaving upstate New York and driving to Chicago. It was like this mission, this unbelievable mission. And when I got to the clinic and the day of the treatment, I got this injection, and when I came through, this nurse asked me, how do you feel? I was like, I feel the same. And it's like, okay, I'm going to speak with the doctor. And the doctor came and said, we will give you a second treatment, something about C5, C2. I mean, I'm a little groggy, but I'm like, all right, I've gone this far. Let the doctor run with it. So I got the second injection. And when I woke up from that second injection, the same nurse was sitting there, and she said, how do you feel? And I couldn't speak. I knew something had happened, but I knew this was the seminal moment in my adult life. So I began to cry uncontrollably. And I said to her, I'm afraid to let go. I don't know how I feel. And I can tell you from that experience, I understood, as bad as PTSD was, I'd gotten used to it. It was like a weird kind of comfort zone. I know what these symptoms are, and I know I suffer from them, and I know they deprive me of the best things in life. But it's all I have. Going to the other side with this treatment, I don't know what's going to happen. And what if I'm the 1 in a million for whom it fails, and I get an adverse effect, and God knows then. So that was how I left it. I explained to Dr. Lipov, I feel something, I just don't know what it is. And a few days later, sitting on my couch, I'm desperate for an answer, desperate for a reason to let go. And in a conversation with my son, I'm like, Jason, my son, I'm like, Jay, I don't know, I don't know what it is, but I feel something, but I'm in such a dark place. I don't know if it was for me. And he just said, Dad, the static is gone from your voice. Just let it happen, Dad, let it happen. And in almost an instant, bang, it happened. This aura of relaxation came over me, and it's like, Dennis, this is the latest version of you. This is that whole other part of post-traumatic stress disorder has left your soul. Not your body or your mind, but left your soul. It's okay to let go and feel peace. And so, since that happened a few years ago, there have always been times where I'm like, I don't know if that thing really worked. But that's still PTSD symptoms, and it's me personally. It's just self-doubt because, again, I was in the darkness for so long. It was creepy trying to emerge from it. But if somebody would to say to me today, Dennis, how do you feel and how did you get where you are? I might describe this journey, but I would strongly emphasize I got this treatment in Chicago. And it took some reassurances from my son for me to let it happen. But when it did, I understood all that research I did, all that questioning and all that self-analysis was for a good thing, because it led to who I am. Gotta love New York. Everything that I am, I have Dr. Lipov to thank. And if I were in a group of veterans, and I did speak with one veteran who called me a few weeks ago and asked me about this treatment, and he pretty much got this story. I told him, look, if I had to put it into one little nutshell, I would say I found the courage to take the risk because I just couldn't handle the burden of this darkness anymore. And this treatment was the beacon of light. I live with it today. I know I'm different. It's not very hard to get up here and talk about it. So thank you for your time.
I don't know how to follow you. But I was thinking about you when you were talking, and then the fire truck went by. I don't know exactly what relief you felt right after your 2 shots, but before the stellate ganglion block, that noise would have sent me like this, right? Our war zone instincts kick in, and I would have been like that. And then I would have been angry, because that's another feature of PTSD for a lot of us, the anger that takes over our lives and sometimes poisons our relationships, despite our best wishes and efforts. And it never ceases to amaze me what this injection can do to reset our brains and allow us to go back to being our normal selves and interact with our loved ones in a healthy way again. And you know, some of you who aren't as familiar with the stellate ganglion block, and Dr. Lipov is going to talk about it in a minute, I just want to share with you, somebody who's done it, I've had fillings that are more invasive. I'm not kidding. So, you know, the cost-benefit ratio is pretty good when you're talking about an injection and getting your life back. But I don't want to belabor that. I want to introduce you to our next guest. She's an intellect, an artist, and a philanthropist. Shaw Thomas empowers visionaries to improve society by bringing innovative products and services to life. Shaw honed her extensive experience in messaging and business strategy by lending her talents to, among other things, the 2000 Sydney Olympic Games, and working in private antique document preservation. In addition, her expertise in marketing for Condé Nast and the legal services industry has positioned her as a brilliant, strategic, and creative voice. Shaw says that she has learned personally and powerfully that we are each uniquely called to involvement and service as conduits to the vision that God casts. She says her position is humble submission to God's purpose. With more than 10 years of board-level volunteer service in child advocacy, her eyes have been opened to lifelong impacts of trauma and violence on children. As a result, Shaw now extends her talents to erase PTSD Now as a bold voice in the mission to eradicate trauma wherever it exists. Please welcome my friend, Shaw Thomas.
So I'm here, my 3 most favorite human beings on the planet are back in South Carolina, and I just made it here in time because it was worth being here. This is so important. And what it comes down to is, how do you share a miracle with the world? And that's what this is. Something that I have discovered over the past 1.5 years since my husband was treated is that we all have sympathetic nervous systems. We all understand what a fight or flight response is. And when that fight or flight response is stuck that it cannot recover its pre-trauma state, we will all manifest symptoms of PTSD, whether immediately or in the long term. And trauma is trauma. Trauma can happen in a moment, or it can happen like a water drip. And the fact is, this is an injury. The anxiety, the sleeplessness, the hair trigger, suicidal ideation, all of those things, they are symptoms of an injury. And this, Dr. Lipov's innovation, is the medical miracle that can medically cure that injury. I think if you were to see, and this is to Linda's really wise and insightful point, if you were to see my husband, the most amazing man I've ever met, he is a man who has accomplished incredible things, and yet the story under the surface is one of two worlds growing up. A family of incredible notoriety and wealth, and then the humble childhood that he had, and in the middle was a father who repeatedly abandoned and neglected him. There was death, there was addiction by others in his family unit. So the levels and layers of trauma, they just built up that a young man at a very, very young age casually put the weight of the world on his shoulders. And to see him, you would never know this. After I met him, deal was done, and all of a sudden I started to understand what was behind this incredible human. And we knew that there were scars. And we knew that there were things that were holding him back from really experiencing peace and joy. And then we became pregnant. And now this incredible man who had never had the experience of having a father was going to become one. And the pressure of that, there was so much joy and anticipation, but there was also this incredible anxiety that started to build. I had both of our sons within a year of each other, so you can imagine that was a ride unto itself. And then the matriarch of my husband's family passed, and all of a sudden, this weight came over him. He blue-coded twice in the ER over a course of 3 months. We came to Chicago, and I remember the first day, he had the right side treated. He wasn't entirely convinced. He had come to prove me wrong. This isn't going to work. Nope, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Our life is good. There's nothing to fix here. And it was that evening that all of a sudden he noticed, okay, I'm feeling a lot of peace. And my other side happens to be short-circuiting. And if nothing else, I need to go back tomorrow to normalize this. Everything needs to be functioning the same. He went in the second day, this time the wisdom of his wife saying, you need the twilight anesthesia. We're not going to be a man and do the local anesthesia. Let's let you have a nap. He was treated, and Dr. Lipov came to me in the waiting area, and he walked out of the elevator, and he looked at me, and he said he's doing really well. He said he's doing great. And I looked at him, I said, no, you say he's doing great. And Dr. Lipov said, no, I just talked to him. He said he's doing great. And tears began to well up. My husband had never said that he was doing great. And my husband, the person I love most on the planet, with a new light in his face, literally his complexion had changed, and he walked out of the elevator. And he embraced me and he said, babe, I have a second chance at life. So I'm here today because I want to see as many second chances in this world, and so does he. There is no gift greater. My husband and I are people of faith. There is eternity in heaven. There is our family. And then there is this as what we consider the greatest blessing this side of heaven. We want to share it with the world. We want to bring as much attention as we can. Dr. Lipov, thank you. I'm so proud to be here, and I'm so proud to share it with the world, and this is quite a way. So thank you all for being here. God bless.
I come from a long line of doctors. And I would say that there are a lot of great doctors out there, but only a very small subset are actual healers. And there's one standing here tonight who's truly a healer. Our next guest is a truly exceptional physician. Dr. Eugene Lipov was born in Ukraine, grew up in poverty in the former USSR. He watched his mother battle and spiral into depression, ultimately dying by suicide. He has lived with trauma, like a lot of us. He knows personally what it feels like and the weight that it is on your shoulders. He also knows the relief that can be achieved by what is now called DSR, or dual sympathetic reset. Don't worry, he'll explain it. Endorsed in 2010 by President Obama, profiled by international media, and cited by the Pentagon for its transformative potential. DSR essentially reboots your nervous system. It's a bad metaphor, but it's like Control-Alt-Delete. Or maybe unplugging your laptop when it overheats. And it amazingly has now achieved an 85 to 90% success rate in restoring people to their pre-trauma state. And please bear with me because I want to repeat that. 85 to 90%. There is nothing in modern medicine or in the pharmaceutical industry that has that success rate. And that is why we know it is so important. Annually, this procedure grants relief to thousands of people. Dr. Lipov is working to increase access for all who suffer from any kind of trauma. He founded Erase PTSD Now to raise awareness and funds to make this procedure globally available and financially accessible. I'd like you to welcome a man who has changed thousands of lives, and I'm grateful to say, including mine, Dr. Eugene Lipov.
To be an anesthesiologist and actually have a true impact on people's mental health, I think it's amazing. The reason I'm very interested in mental health, as Linda alluded to, is my mother committed suicide. I have lived in a family that was very stressed. My father was a survivor from World War II with severe PTSD, and unfortunately that really was a very complex childhood, shall we say, led to my mother's suicide, and that gave me a lot of encouragement, shall we say, to treat people. It is amazing to see the number of people in the audience who've had this treatment. And then I personally have had this treatment as well. It really changed my life as well. But yeah, as you say, this is in New York City. But I think the observation by Linda that the sergeant did not jump at the fire engine, I think that just demonstrates how basic sympathetic system is. If you think of fight and flight system, which is sympathetic system, is all pervasive. My wife said, it's impossible for it to work. I don't see how that's going to work. But if you think of it, it's so basic, and it's relatively easy to reverse the effects of the problems by doing a relatively simple, straightforward procedure. So it's been done. It has been done since 1925. I've been personally doing it since 1987. But again, it was very interesting to see my friends and people who've actually gone through it, their descriptions of it is fascinating to me. The description by Mr. Finley of the dual block, that has never been done before. And the only reason it came to be is because I was treating a sniper who was suicidal. We did one block and it didn't work for him at all. And I happened to know how to do the other block, and then I did it and took away his issue. And that is exactly why we used to take people back and do the dual block. So dual sympathetic reset. And then we started doing bilateral or both sides. Turns out childhood trauma seems to live on left and right, and adult trauma seems to live more on the right side. All of that was determined just taking the patients, and I've been very fortunate they have been born to a family of physicians. And I think one thing that my parents definitely taught me, listen and talk to the patient. It's not a complicated thing. If you don't, you're losing an amazing opportunity to do better. And just success rates of 30-40% of psychiatric treatment is just, I think, unconscionable. That is a very problematic thing. Now is the time to do something different in trying to treat it. And I think with everybody's help here, we can do amazing things. We already done doing amazing things. Thanks to Linda and Glenn's generosity, we're doing what I'm calling Linda Study, which is going to be the real study that I've been telling the Pentagon for 10 years. I've been telling the VA for 8 years that we need to do real study, real research, using functional MRI, doing the real deal. It's like, and everybody agreed with it. I go, nah, but we're not going to do it. That great thought, thank you, but nah. We're going to do the study, the same cost, but it's going to give us garbage results. Good, but could be better, but no, we can't be doing that. So thankfully, it's starting this month in this very city. NYU is doing it, and you know what? That's an amazing institution, and I think that's going to make it. Thank you so much. It's going to make the study, it's going to push stellate ganglion or DSR or this technique to be much more acceptable, because one of the things is most physicians, when I talk to doctors about, they still give me, it's like, nah, I don't think so. First of all, you're not that smart. And I always tell them I'm smarter than you. Number two, why haven't anybody else figured it out since 1925? And anybody who's interested, I can give you the explanation. But thank you, competition. But the point is, I was the right place, the right time. But it's really important to think differently. What has been done? My mother was under the care of a psychiatrist when she killed herself. She was on 2 psychiatric drugs, and that is not as successful. Anyway, love New York. I am beyond humbled to see everybody here and to see what we've been able to achieve. I think next year is going to be, I can't even imagine where we're going to be going from here. But I think the results speak for themselves. We were able to help military sexual trauma victims and survivors, being able to trail survivors. We were able to scan 4 brains of patients before antistellate. One of them was a Delta Force commander. His wife, which is another thing I'm very passionate about, it's called secondary PTSD. You can think of PTSD as a viral agent. When somebody gets in the family, actually, the spouse can get it and the children can get it. So a lot of times we're trying to treat the family unit, not just the person. And then we were able to treat a survivor, false incarceration survivor. He was in jail for about 12 years, had horrible PTSD, and his wife. So if you look at their MRIs, functional MRIs, or actually had SPECT scans, they demonstrate similar type of changes. So the point is, if you look at trauma as trauma, meaning if there is a change, there's going to be a change. It doesn't matter what you got it. You can reverse it by doing this approach. So, and again, the compliance is great. I highly recommend going to sleep like your husband did. Like first time, he didn't like, no bueno. Second time was much easier. When I had mine done, I was asleep. A, I didn't want to feel it. B, I didn't want to tell the doc how to do it. That would not look good. Anyway, with that said, I thank you so much, everybody, for coming. You're letting me live my dream. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm going to reframe the fire engine noise. I prefer to think of that as a personal message to Dr. Lipov from the FDNY, that there are firefighters who would really like to be treated with stellate ganglion block. And I feel like I should also explain, I think, I probably shouldn't speak for Shaw and for Dennis, but you know, when you see us tear up, don't worry about us. Those are tears of joy and relief and gratitude. And honestly, awe that there is something out there that can really give us our lives back. So please, can we have another round of applause for Dr. Lipov? Our final speaker is Angela Rose, our partner in this event. She is the founder of PAVE, which stands for Promoting Awareness, Victim Empowerment. She's a renowned speaker, author, activist, expert on sexual assault, and an advocate for survivor empowerment. Angela's heroism was born after she was abducted and assaulted at age 17 by a repeat sex offender who was on parole for murder. After she turned to authorities for help, she was subjected to scrutiny, blame, and additional victimization. But Angela did something great. She turned her anger and sense of injustice, she turned it into the flame of activism. She became her own hero. She collaborated with the community and the other victims of her attacker to enact Illinois' Sexually Dangerous Persons Commitment Act in 1998. In 2001, Angela founded PAVE to create education and action surrounding the issues of sexual violence. Today, PAVE has multiple chapters engaged in training college students on sexual assault prevention. It has convened the National Campus Sexual Assault Summit broadcast to over 300 colleges. Also, Angela has served on the White House Task Force to Protect Students from Sexual Assault, chaired by then Vice President Biden. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Angela Rose.
Thank you so much, Linda, for that beautiful introduction. Thank you all of you for being here. Thank you everyone for tuning in live here, joining us on Facebook. I want to thank Dr. Lipov and Erase PTSD Now for allowing PAVE to partner with you for this amazing event and for this billboard that is going to reach millions of eyes in Times Square. We know that every person knows someone who's been impacted by trauma. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused before the age of 18. Every one of us knows someone who's been impacted by trauma, and I would dare to say, all of us has had some type of trauma in our own lives. And I'm here to say that there is hope. So I've been in this movement now for 25 years. 25 years I have dedicated my life to shattering the silence of sexual violence. And PAVE really works across the country not only to prevent these crimes, but to help survivors thrive after trauma. And on the prevention side, we now work in K through 12, not just on college campuses, because the one thing we learned from the White House Task Force is the best way to prevent sexual assault on college campuses. That's right, they know it too. Start the conversation younger, to talk about consent, to talk about healthy relationships, to know how to support if one of their friends disclose. Because all too often, when survivors are assaulted, either domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, whatever trauma they go through, oftentimes survivors aren't met with the support that they deserve. Oftentimes survivors are very re-victimized by their peers, by well-meaning loved ones who don't know what to say or do, or by the law enforcement. So we need to come together. Not only does this trauma impact our individual lives, but I can tell you from my own experience, it impacts families. It impacts communities. It impacts all of us. And so one thing that I'm so passionate about in learning about Dr. Lipov's work and Erase PTSD Now is that it literally changes people's lives. And I love what Linda said. She got her life back. Her husband got his wife back. I am so inspired by this work, it brings me to tears because I personally know from my own experience of dealing with PTSD and talking to countless survivors over the 25 years that I have done this work. They know it too. That's right, that this trauma can really limit us from reaching our fullest potential. And this treatment can help give us the joy in our life, and I think it's so important for people to realize that there is a happy, healthy life after trauma possible. I married my best friend, we have dance parties in the kitchen, I have 2 amazing kids, that no matter what we go through in life, it does not have to define us. And so I just want to thank all of you at Erase PTSD Now for allowing PAVE to partner. We do have some free resources for survivors, for all of you watching. we launched survivors.org, which is a free portal with a lot of amazing different resources for survivors of trauma. We're doing healing circles virtually. We know that COVID was a very difficult time for survivors of trauma, very isolating. So we have a healing circle starting next Thursday, free, virtual, online. You can find more about that at survivors.org. And I want everybody to understand how important it is that we as survivors and as a community recognize PTSD as a biological issue. This is so important because survivors need to understand why we act this way. When I went away to college, I started PAVE at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I would walk with my hand over my throat because when I was kidnapped, he put a knife to my throat. I would constantly feel like there was someone behind me. But I didn't realize that all of those feelings was from when I was kidnapped. Because when you're in it, you can't see it. And so what this treatment allows people to do is to get their life back because it really limits, again, our God-given potential. This PTSD and this trauma can create these layers and layers of, unrequited love. It's very difficult for survivors to learn how to love and be loved and to learn how to be vulnerable. And this treatment can really give survivors their life back. So I want to thank all of you. Thank you to Colleen and to the staff of Erase PTSD Now. Thank you, Dr. Lipov, for the amazing work that you do. And I'm going to bring Paul up for some closing remarks. But I just want to leave a quote by Margaret Mead, my favorite quote, which is, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." Thank you all so much. Paul, come on up.
I used to think that trauma was incomparable, right? How could the trauma of accidentally killing a child in combat compare to getting your purse taken on the subway, right? Certainly, one has a far greater effect on well-being than the other, but I have come to understand that the sympathetic nervous system doesn't know the origin of trauma, and it doesn't care. And to the brain, trauma is trauma, and it's not something you just can't figure out emotionally or psychologically. It's a physical injury that we can now see and measure. So if you've been lucky enough to live life insulated from trauma, maybe the weight of this burden is beyond your imagining. Maybe you simply can't understand the crippling impacts of anxiety, insomnia, hypervigilance, but of this I am certain. There is none among us who don't know fear, pain, suffering, or injury of some kind. So instead of trying to imagine trauma, just imagine you break your ankle. Right? You can't walk, you can't stand, you can't care for your family, and most importantly, you can't live your life. But in your injury and pain, you hear of this miraculous new procedure. It's called an X-ray and a cast. And now you have hope. Right? There's a path to healing, to recovery, to relief, to getting your life back until you discover that the procedure, because it's innovative and relatively unknown, is out of your reach financially. You simply don't have the money to get your life back. How do you think the ankle starts to feel then? Better or worse? It's at this exact intersection of despair and hope that Erase PTSD Now exists. Because we are there to say, we won't let money stand in the way of you getting your life back. So I'd ask you, what would you spend to save your life? $100, $100,000, $1 million? What would you spend to save the life of someone you love? For my wife and my kids, I would give all that I have to save them. But that's an easy question. The harder question is, what would you give to save a total stranger? We can't do what we do without the generosity of people like you. It's gross and it's obscene that there is a direct correlation between how much money we raise and how many people we can help, but that is just reality. And it doesn't matter if people make a humble gesture or a grand one. Know that anything that you give, if it comes from the heart, today will save lives tomorrow. So ask yourself this, what would you give to save a life? Because when you give to Erase PTSD Now, that's exactly what you'll do. Thank you all for being here.